Introduction.
A newcomer to the field of second language acquisition, or SLA, one who is seriously committed to understanding the field, its theories, findings and applications will no doubt feel quite confused. Is SLA a subfield of psycholinguistics or its own field? Is it an applied discipline designed to inform language teaching, or a basic science endeavor which aims to discover something about human nature? Where can one draw the border between applied linguistics, second language teaching, and SLA studies? Our newcomer may read different opinions, all recent and all from prominent researchers, on what the field is, what it has accomplished, and where it's headed. For example, Bill Van Patten argues that
most L theory and research is irrelevant to language teaching, and most of what is relevant to language teaching we've known for some years. Teachers need to grapple with basic facts before grappling with any particular theory.
Van Patten 2020 p. 271, emphasis added. A strikingly opposite opinion would be that of Rod Ellis, who reflects,
"Where are we? Controversy, different views, different opinions. This is what SLA is. It is not an agreed, accepted body of findings."
Ellis 2021, 1/1919. So, which is it? Are there any facts in SLA or just different opinions on the same body of research? Other scholars provide yet other assessments. For James Lantolf, SLA is undergoing a crisis in terms of theory development. Theories can be quite far apart in many issues, and nobody seems to be working on a unifying theoretical framework. Lantolf 2023. Before his passing, Michael Long shared a similar preoccupation. The field had seen too many theories, most of which had historically failed, he believed. Long 2017 p. 19, and for Diane Larson Freeman. The future of SLA lies in many long overdue epistemological, methodological and even ethical paradigm shifts, put forward in the meta-theoretical framework of complex dynamic systems, for example, Larson Freeman 2018. Paradigm shifts, I should add, that would challenge the validity of previous SLA knowledge-making in significant ways. In the context of this bewildering variety of opinions by some of the people that could very well be considered the architects of this field, I would not blame our hypothetical newcomer if she simply gave up. At this level of scientific disagreement, SLA knowledge is simply not very accessible at all. The next step for someone eager to understand the field would be colossal. Try catching up with a contested history of contested findings by reading unusually long books that accommodate SLA's diversity, for example Ellis, 2015. Gass et al., 2020, only to slowly find out these accounts are characterized as biased by this or that other scholar. The next task is keeping up with the major relevant journals, which by itself would seem simple enough. Except you have to keep track of different theoretically incommensurable lines of research, from a plethora of perspectives. And while you are at it, try keeping track of which scholars accuse which of not fully understanding some or all of the basic tenets of their pet theories. What happens when you do decide to try? Many of us get the sense at a certain point that the more you study SLA the less you know, that you cannot really be too confident or too sure about almost anything, and that applying the science to teaching practice is often a matter of trusting one of the many available theoretical approaches and working with it, or alternatively, as other people who are understandably fed up with theoretical debates do, being eclectic. That is, cherry-picking ideas from different approaches even when that will inevitably lead to spectacular contradictions as to what you supposedly believe to be true about language and acquisition. Thus, one of the realizations that drives the present book is the following. When there is no consensus on even the most fundamental issues, there is no knowledge. On even the most fundamental issues, at least not the kind of knowledge a science should ideally provide, coherent, authoritative, usable. But why all the chaos? According to Susan Gass, SLA is characterized by its interdisciplinarity, and this is a good thing, in that, if research is approached from a multiplicity of perspectives, we can all get a rich picture of what acquisition is. But she also reflects, on the other hand, that the existence of multiple perspectives in what is supposed to be a single field may lead to confusion, because often scholars from different theoretical backgrounds, often opposing or incompatible ones, struggle to communicate with each other. Gass et al., 2020 pxx. In fact, as it turns out, this very idea is at the heart of an old debate in the philosophy of science, scientific unification versus epistemic pluralism, intertwined and related to the so-called Lakatos-Feyerabend debate, a debate for and against the existence of a scientific method, for example Lynch, 2018, Musgrave and Pigden, 2023. What these debates encapsulate is the following: should we build an inflexible but rigorous scientific unity, which seems at least somewhat authoritarian, and thus may obstruct creativity and progress through the silencing of fringe, potentially revolutionary theories? Or, alternatively, should we let everyone, including lay experts, freely generate knowledge, which would systematically improve epistemic diversity and inclusion, but could lead to some amount of disarray and a confusing line between science and pseudoscience? On top of all the controversies and debates regarding the nature of language and acquisition, We also see different postures regarding unification, with some leaders in the field favoring the idea of at least embarking on that quest through more theoretical development. Landhof 2023. Others adopting a posture that the better theories will naturally prove themselves. Holstein 2023, while others favor a purely applied view, in which fragmentation is not a problem so long as theories are useful for some specific purpose, and where one should not criticize useful theories simply on the ground that they are not scientific. Ellis 2021 p. 202. The reader may find it strange that I simultaneously agree and disagree with these three postures at different levels on different grounds, as I will elaborate throughout the chapters of this book. Of course, prominent researchers in the field will not be prone to bad ideas, but they will be prone, just like all and any of us, to partial and selective attention bias. The particular one I try to address in this book, not too different from Ortega 2019, is that the scope of the field and its theories is and has been skewed towards the perceived needs of the first world. While the better theories may indeed prove themselves factually, they will certainly not debias themselves. For that, we need to hear different voices from different communities that have not been typically the main focus of SLA research. Because the fact of the matter is that a whole array of decision-makers, knowingly or unknowingly, are in desperate need of scientific advice concerning additional language acquisition and development. Yes, the first examples that may come to mind are a school principal, or the dean of a university's language center, trying to encourage more scientifically informed teaching practices. And they would certainly have problems deciding which scholars they should listen to. Assessment, though, starts to go away from L2 classrooms. When we think of universities' admissions offices around the world using language proficiency tests to decide on the future of millions of young people. All the while the concept of proficiency has been historically fuzzy, or under-theorized in Esley-Hulstegien 2015b, Leclerc et al. 2014, Park et al. 2022. This creates a system of linguistic gatekeeping that claims authoritative knowledge and precise measurement, when in reality, from a rigorous scientific perspective, it offers neither. The notion that theories should not be criticized for not being scientific starts to seem a bit socially unfair at this point. Because is it fair for high-stakes exams that greatly impact people's lives to be based on pseudoscience? We can further leave the realm of education entirely, taking into consideration other contexts where proficiency tests are used as linguistic gatekeeping. Think of immigration offices around the world, using these pseudoscientific tests for deciding who they grant residence status. Think also of some regional legislature, like the Parliament of the Balearic Islands, threatening to fire perfectly capable Spanish-speaking medical staff from practicing medicine in Catalan-speaking Ibiza, if they are unable to pass some test, even when most people in that socio-linguistic context could be considered bilingual, without the need for neither written nor spoken fluency in each other's languages. Now picture a government implementing some linguistic policy, trying to, for example, turn a whole country bilingual in a short period of time, with all of the great social complexities and risks this entails, without an L2 science sophisticated enough to inform those efforts, as is the case for Taiwan. Think of language conservation efforts, which rely heavily on documentation and seem to largely employ a structuralist view of language, creating dictionaries and grammars. When an organized field of SLA would be able to provide conceptual means for revitalization beyond documentation, based both on psycholinguistic principles and on functionalist understandings of development that see the richness of languages in their culture-driven dynamic change. Finally, is it ethical for a multi-billion-dollar industry built around language learning to sell scamish products, from books to mobile apps, which make wild promises that have no basis on science, with absolutely no regulation or accountability? What if it is indeed unethical? Then, what is the science that will inform consumer protection policies? The social significance of SLA as a science goes well beyond the realm of education, but practical matters in SLA have effectively remained synonymous with L2 pedagogy, and this bias has influenced the scope of most theories, as well as how research is carried out, which is noticeable in how A, most research focuses on instructed second language learners, and B, there is overlap between SLA and second language teaching researchers and journals. A blurry line between these fields not only conceptually dismisses any route to L2 acquisition other than formal instruction in classrooms, akin to the so-called Weird 2 sampling bias crisis in psychology, see Ortega, 2019, but also any social issue in need of an L2 science, other than L2 teaching. For this reason, I submit that when we talk about SLA being an applied discipline, we must pose the following question: applied to what? The problem with the applied view of SLA, as opposed to the basic science view, is that there is a value judgment regarding where it is important to apply the science. And this can come at a great cost when it comes to the type of knowledge that we are able to produce, because we end up accidentally introducing a systematic bias. Furthermore, such a value judgment will not go unaffected by historical, geographical, social, cultural, and political influences. That is, if SLA is mostly a first-world-led field, mostly inside the Anglosphere, and heavily intertwined with English teaching, then it will not be difficult to predict which audiences the application will be unwittingly designed to benefit. So, theories will not prove themselves after all, insofar as they will still leave unattended a whole array of phenomena in need of explanation outside of the realm of education. Theories should also not remain unscientific, because a comprehensive, worldwide, and historical understanding of multilingualism, language acquisition and development, is both epistemically stronger and more egalitarian, since it will be able to address all manner of constantly emerging needs in all sorts of contexts, providing meaningful problem-solving aid. It is also important to note that even though the proponents of theories in the field are not exactly a diverse group, their theoretical differences have remained unsolved for many years. Accordingly, a second realization that drives this present book can be phrased as follows. We have a science with a narrow scope, yet systematically contested findings and theories, which means we should take steps to both increase epistemic diversity, while simultaneously taking steps to achieve more impactful, meaningful, and systemic epistemic coordination. Because the truth of the matter is, every day, all around the globe, many entities, from teachers to governments, make important decisions that impact many people's lives, informed by a complex mixture of idiosyncrasy, pseudoscience, premature generalizations, and disputed findings. The stakes are high for decision-making in a variety of sociolinguistic contexts with diverse needs, while the science remains culturally skewed, fragmented, ambiguous, and as such, rather inaccessible. Fortunately, we do not lack the tools to remedy this situation, because many philosophers of science have been working on figuring out how to build consensus in a way that allows for scientifically informed decision-making in society as well as epistemic diversity and freedom in academia, key requirements for the advancement and the utility of science. In this introduction, I have attempted to present the case for consensus building in SLA. There is a need for a pluralistic and coordinated science, which is rich and coherent enough to both develop strong scientific knowledge and to inform decision-making of all kinds for the benefit of diverse societies with diverse needs. Throughout the subsequent sections I elaborate this argument assisted by perspectives from the history, philosophy, and sociology of science. A principal problem I address is the existence of multiple theoretical frameworks and research programs that seem to contradict each other. Can we really learn facts which do not depend on any theory? Such is the focus of Part 1, where I discuss theoretical development in SLA. I explore the epistemic importance of theories, but also how social factors play into their emergence and development, and how the way they are framed has consequences in society. When we hear or read that SLA is fragmented or divided, how divided can we assume it is? And what is the source of these divisions and disagreements? Is it facts, theories, methodologies, social groups, or values? This is the focus in Part 2, where I present a philosophical diagnosis of scientific disagreement in the field, focusing on three main themes: language, acquisition, and values. This diagnosis attempts to strike a balance between epistemological and purely sociological issues that drive this fragmentation. After a diagnosis of disagreement, the next step is figuring out how consensus could be built. But which kind of consensus should we build? Should we agree on facts, theories, pedagogies, or values? Which of those agreements benefit society the most? And which of those benefit science the most? Can a consensus be valid in non-pluralistic scientific communities? Does consensus need to be absolute and permanent in order to be authoritative? What should we do when the very same evidence can be analyzed and interpreted in more than one way? Such questions can only be addressed in propositional ways. Accordingly, in Part 2, I present a framework for consensus building in SLA, focusing on four themes: consensus, demarcation, epistemology, and social falsification. As collaboration is discouraged by both epistemological and sociological issues, the framework attempts not only to identify the inherent philosophical tensions between theoretical frameworks and provide possible avenues and means to work towards commensurable theory testing, but also to provide a flexible epistemological framework, along with a proposed model of social interaction between researchers of clashing theoretical positions, aiming at increased pluralism and a more organized and systematic negotiation of perspectives.